Today we'll talk about Fortran statements. So as we had discussed, and from the materials that I had posted, if you have gone through them, these Fortran statements can be classified into two types. So they can be either executable or they can be non-executable. So executable statements are those statements in Fortran which actually represent some action taken during the running of the programs. On the other hand, non-executable statements, they can specify characteristics, initial values, etc. They are not executed, or yet they are not a part of the execution sequence of a program. So let's see. First, we'll be talking about the executable statements one by one. If you have gone through your syllabus, you'll see the first executable statement that is there in the syllabus is the assignment statements. So I have given a note on this also, the assignment statements. So in your exams, you'll basically get questions on like what are Fortran statements, what are executable and non-executable statements, and what are its types. So what you have to do is you have to define what are these statements. Then you, at best, you can write the general format of the assignment statement or any other statement and give an example. So in the notes that I had given for the assignment statements, they can be, or rather the executable statements, they can be assignment statements, the input output statements, the control statements, and the return statements. These are some of the executable statements that is given in your syllabus. So they can be, as I told you, the assignment statements. So this executable first one that is given is the assignment statements. Then you have the, as per your syllabus, the input and output, they are given separately. I'm putting it together, the input and the output statements. So these statements can be either formatted or they can be unformatted. So these statements can be formatted and unformatted. So today basically I want to discuss the input and output statements with and without format. The assignment statements, already whatever I have given in the notes, that should be sufficient. Okay, they're of three or four types basically. So they can be arithmetic assignment statement, logical assignment statement, then character assignment statement, and statement level assignment statement. So this I have discussed in the, or I have given you the notes. If you go through it, it will be clear. So you may be at best asked what are the different types of assignment statements, give the general format and an example. So I won't discuss more about that. Let's go ahead. So we'll be discussing about the format statements. So this is important. So what we call as the format statements in Fortran, format statements. So basically, if you want to write a program in Fortran, suppose that somebody was asking me how to write a program uh, to add two numbers. So what we need to do is we need to input the two numbers, we need to add the two numbers, write the program to add the two numbers, then output it. So you'll need input and output statements. Now this input, what we are talking about, the input and output statements. So these statements can be, as I discussed, formatted or unformatted. They can be either formatted, right? They can be either formatted or unformatted. So what do you mean by this formatted and unformatted? So format of the data means if I want to specify the type and size of the data that I want to input and output. If I want to specify the type and size of the data that I want to input or output, then I use what is called a format statement. In Fortran, I use a format statement. So this statement is a statement which gives the format of the data that is input or output. So this format statement is actually a non-executable statement. You have to remember this. This format statement is non-executable. However, we need to use this format statement with the input and output statements, which are executable statements. So don't get confused between executable and non-executable statements. Input and output statements, they are executable statements, but in your syllabus, along with that, we need input statements which are formatted and unformatted, and output statements which are formatted and unformatted. So this formatted and unformatted, formatted input statement means an input statement where we specify the size and type of the data that we will input. So this size and type of the data that we will input, if we want to specify, we have to specify the format of this data. How we will do that? We will do it using what is called a format statement. Fine. So similarly, for an output statement, if we want to specify the size and the type of the output statement, output data, we will use a format statement with that output statement. So we can specify the size and type of the output data. So if you have gone through the notes that or the material that I posted, there's the second chapter of the book by Javier. It talks about the format specifications. So everything is clearly explained over there, but just I want to explain a few points. So this format specification or the format statement uses the is used to specify, as I told you, the type and size of the data. So we need to know the format of the type and size of the data. So this format can be of different types. So the first one that we talk about is what is called the I format. So you can make out from here I format. It means integer format. I stands for integer. It stands for the integer format. So integer format means if I want to input or output an integer type of a data, integer means this is a numeric constant, integer type of a data, then I use the integer format. The general form of this I format is IW, where I stands for the integer format and W is the width of the data that will be input or output. So say I have a integer type of a data 123. So this is the integer type of a data, right? Because it doesn't have a decimal. So this is a numeric constant of the type integer type of a numeric constant. So what is the width of this data? 1, 2, 3. 3 places, 3 bits. So this data, the format for this data can be I3. Okay, say I have another data that is minus 567.9, minus 5679. So what is the width of this data? This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So W here is 5 and it is integer. So the format for this data can be specified as integer 5. Any other data if we talk about, say 98764. So here W is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and it is integer type, no decimal point. So the format will be I5. The second type of this is I format. Sorry, this is the I format that I am talking about. I format. The second type of format that we can talk about is what is known as the F format. The F format analogously is used to represent real type of data, real data. So real data, they have numeric data, real constants rather, they have a decimal point. So the general form of this data is fw dot d. So F stands for real, W it represents the total width of the represents the total width of the data that is input or output, and D is the number of places. D is the number of places after the decimal point. So the F format general form is fw.d. W is the width and D is the number of places after decimal. Say for example, I have a real data which is 536.23. So what is the total width of this data? This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Total width is 6. So here W is 6. How many places after decimal? Decimal point is here. 2 places after decimal. So D is 2. So how will I represent this? What will be the format for this data? That will be, it will be represented as F6.2. Similarly, if I want the number minus 1579.1, total width of this data, 1 place for the decimal, sign 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So here W is 7 and D is 1. So the format for this, we can write it as F7.1. So this is the F format used for real type of a data. The next format that we use is what is known as the E format. E format similarly is used for representing numeric data in the exponential form. In exponential form, you remember in Fortran, we can write a very small number or a very large number as in an exponential form. Let me say I have a number in the exponential form as 136.53. 3 e to the power minus 3. Another important format that we use in Fortran is what is known as the X format. So X format is used to skip columns when we write or read data. Basically, for writing purpose it is used. So the general form of the X format is nx, where n is the number of space or the columns that we want to skip. Say, for example, I need to write out two numbers, 23 and a is equal to 23 and say b is equal to 42. So if I don't specify any format, then the compiler will just write the number as something like this. In the memory, it will store two places for the first number and two places for the second number. So on screen, it will be written as 2342. It becomes difficult to differentiate between the two numbers. So what we can use the X format. So let me say I ask the compiler, when we do actually the input and output statements, this will be more clear. So let me say I put in between, in the right statement, when we do it actually I'll show you, say 2x means I ask the compiler to skip two places in between the two numbers. Then what will happen? It will leave these two places and write the second number. So the first one will be 2, 3, fine. Then it will leave two places blank and write the other number. So that's how we can skip. So this is known as the X format. So there is another important thing in writing in the output statement. What happens, that is mentioned in the notes also, what happens is that in the output statement, the first place in Fortran, you can say it is a bug, the first place or the column is lost. In the output statement, if I don't instruct it, usually the first column is lost. So if I just ask it to write 2, 3 and 4, 2, these two will go missing. So this is known as carriage control. So what we do in Fortran, in the output statement, we usually ask the compiler using the X format to skip the first column and start writing. So we call it the carriage control. Why it is used? It is used because by default in Fortran, the first column or the first place is lost. So whatever is written there won't appear on screen. It will be lost. So we use something called the carriage control. So what we do using the carriage control, we ask the compiler to skip the first column and start writing from the second one. So using the X format, we can do that. So another format that is there is what is known as the slash format. Slash format is used to go to a new line. So if I want the output to be written in a new line, I can use this slash format. How these are used, I'll tell you when we talk about the input and output statements. Then we have something called the A format. A format is important. It's used to input and output character type of data. The general form of the A format is AW, where A is stands for the character type of data and W is the, as in the case of I format and the F format, it is the width of the data that is being input or output. So character type of data means, let me say I want to output my name. I'm writing down my name here. So what is the total width? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So W here is 6. So the format for this will be A6. We can specify exactly the size and type of the data. This is the A format. So these are the different types of formats that are used in Fortran. So what we talked about, the I format, the F format, the E format. This is of the form, as I told you, IW, weight. This is of the form F, W.D, where D is the number of places after decimal. This is of the form E, W.D. Then we talked about the X format. This is for skipping lines or skipping columns. Then slash format. This is for a new line. And we talked about the A format. This is for character type of a data. Character type of data. The general form for this is, as we talked about, AW. So these are some formats that are used in Fortran. So in your exams, you may get a question like, what is a format statement? What are the different types of format statements? Discuss with examples. So this is the first part of the video where we discuss the formats statements, different formats that are specified using the format statements. The next video I will talk about the input and the output statements, just simply showing you how to input and output using formats.